do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
What's up, everybody? My name is Ethan. This is Courtside TV. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So, this is part 2 of the big NBA trade extravaganza, where the Houston Rockets have traded away James Harden in exchange for a lot of draft picks and Victor Oladipo. So, we're going to go over the Rockets side of this deal. Be sure to look out for the rest of these. If you missed my video yesterday, I talked about the side for the Brooklyn Nets for this trade, and then I will be uploading some videos throughout the weekend for the Cavaliers and the Pacers side of it. So yeah, with that all out of the way, let's get into it. Okay, so the Rockets are getting 3 unprotected first-round picks from the Brooklyn Nets in 2022, 2024, and 2026, as well as the Bucks 2022 first-round pick via the Cavaliers. So they're getting that Bucks pick as well as 3 unprotected Nets picks, and then pick swaps in 2021, 2023, 2025, and 2027. So the Rockets got a lot of picks back, and that's pretty much what they did this deal for. Yes, they're getting Oladipo as well as Dante Exum and Rudions Kurucs. I believe that's the current full trade details. Like I said in the last video, it has not actually been finalized yet as I'm recording this, so there could be more involved. I'm recording this on, Wednesday evening, so this is all accurate to the time of recording, but, we'll see. Things change quickly, so we'll see what it looks like in a couple of days, and maybe they've ended up trading some other players on this roster, which I'll get to, but yeah, as of right now, this is what the trade looks like for the Rockets. And honestly, I feel like they did a pretty good job getting all of those picks out of it. 3 unprotected first-round picks, and those stretch for a while, like 2022, 2024, and 2026. Who knows what the Nets are going to look like by then? We always kind of look at these trades and say, oh, those are going to be late first-round picks. Those are going to be like 25th because the Nets are going to be really good. Yeah, the Nets are going to be really good for the next, 3-4 years. Who knows what they're going to look like by the time these picks come around, right? Like, KD is 32, James Harden's 31, Kyrie, I believe, is 30, maybe 29, and all 3 of them could retire early. I kind of talked about that in the last one. So, potentially we could see the Nets, losing these players in free agency or to retirement and just not being very good by the time these picks come around. In 2026, who knows what either of these rosters are going to look like. So Houston could be getting some really good picks out of this. We'll have to see. It's impossible to predict what these teams are going to look like 6 years from now. But as of, currently, it could be, it's looking pretty good for the Rockets here to be able to get all these picks completely unprotected. So, they could really get some steals out of that. But in terms of a player standpoint, Kurucs is not much. Dante Exum is probably done at this point. He's still under contract. He can play while he's on that deal, but I think the ship is kind of sailed on Dante Exum. He's now past the point of being a young asset and is more into just a bad contract. But Victor Oladipo is the headliner player here, and they ended up not going with Caris LeVert. They wanted Oladipo instead, and that is the part that I get a little bit weirded out on, just because, yes, Oladipo has been playing really well to start the year, but who knows how long he can keep that up, and after that injury that he's had, it's just, he's a big question mark at this point. With Caris LeVert, you know what you're getting, right? And he has averaged close to 20 points per game this year. He's younger, he's signed for the next 3-4 seasons, and maybe that was a part of why they did it, right? Maybe the Rockets wanted to get off that contract a little bit sooner, and I don't believe they have cap space. Maybe they do now. If he comes off the books, the only really big contract for them is John Wall, so maybe they actually will have cap space this offseason. That could be part of it, but also just kind of positioning themselves now to be able to really tear down the rest of this roster, because we did hear reports that Oladipo might not actually want to be a member of the Rockets. That wasn't really where he wanted to be, and he might prefer to be moved somewhere else. So, maybe by the time you're watching this, it's already happened, and he might not actually play for them. But we could see a subsequent move here where Houston flips Oladipo somewhere else and gets, more picks back or another player, a younger player. Who knows, right? We'll have to see how that all unfolds, but Oladipo might not be long for Houston, as well as a lot of the other players on this roster that could potentially be involved in trades, right? We know PJ Tucker has been unhappy, and a lot of teams have been calling about him. I would definitely expect that PJ Tucker is moved before the end of the year because he's an expiring contract. He probably won't be back with the Rockets, so it definitely makes sense to move him. Boogie Cousins, for all of his injuries and stuff, he's still, a pretty good player, and he is on a very cheap deal. So any other team out there that's looking for, for a center out there on the trade market, Boogie Cousins should be available, assuming that the Rockets are willing to part with him. John Wall is probably untradeable at this point, but you have other guys like Ben McLemore, who's, maybe could be something. Daniel House is on a fair deal that you can potentially trade somewhere. Eric Gordon, maybe he's a little expensive. That contract is kind of bad, but maybe he's a tradable player. So the Rockets now have a lot of guys on this roster that they might consider flipping pretty soon. Do they want to be good this year is the big question for Houston. Because looking at the roster on paper, it's actually not bad. You can try out a starting lineup of John Wall at the point guard, Victor Oladipo at 2. You can play like Eric Gordon either as 6-man, or you can even start him at the 3. I know that they've kind of started that 3-guard lineup in the past. You could play like PJ Tucker at 4, Christian Wood at 5. You also have Boogie Cousins coming off the bench, and I mentioned some of those other guys, that are on this team still that make up some pretty decent depth. So if John Wall, continues to look pretty solid coming off of his injury, and so does Oladipo, this is actually not a bad team. Do they want to try to make the playoffs this year? That's another question, right? Because they could very easily do the tanking thing, but they don't have their pick this season. They don't have their own first-round draft pick. I believe that belongs to OKC as part of the Russell Westbrook thing. I think, if I'm not wrong, they don't have their draft picks. So they don't really care about tanking this year because they don't have, their record doesn't matter. They're really only worried about the Brooklyn Nets record for the next 5 years at this point. They don't really care about how good they themselves are. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Rockets do, because they could trade all these guys for picks, but they have no interest in really being bad. They don't really care if they're bad or good. They would rather be good than bad, but you understand what I'm saying, right? So would they rather, take the first round pick for PJ Tucker and Eric Gordon and all these other guys, or would they rather try to at least put a respectable product out on the floor and maybe make the playoffs and go from there? Who knows? That's a question that only Raphael Stone can answer at this point. But we'll just have to see which direction the Rockets take it in. I'll be fascinated to see now, because this is definitely one of the most interesting teams to watch at this point with the collection of talent they have on this roster compared to just the situation they're in with the way that their GM and their ownership has kind of driven them in a certain direction over the past 7 or 8 years of James Harden on the team. Now they're kind of left high and dry with Daryl Morey gone, Mike D'Antoni gone, James Harden gone, and now it's a brand new regime. The roster is completely new. We're just gonna have to see, because the Rockets, man, I'm gonna be really keyed into all the little moves they make over the next couple of years, because this is gonna be fascinating. It's one of the most interesting scenarios in the entire league. And as for the on-court fit, seems like it'll be fine, right? Oladipo has never really had problems playing with anybody. Don't think he'll have problems playing with next to John Wall. I think they'll be fine together. Neither of them are really too like you have to adapt too much to play with them. I think both of them are more or less plug and play. So, Wall and Oladipo is an interesting pairing there in the backcourt. Christian Wood has been absolutely amazing so far this year, so hopefully for Houston he can grow into something, potentially be a player for them, this year and moving forward. It's tough to speculate on the fit because we don't really know what kind of a coach Steven Silas is. We know he had the offensive genius when he was with the Dallas Mavericks and Luka and all that stuff. And then so far this year, he's been, just doing his thing. I haven't really been too keyed into Rockets games because, we figured this was coming. And so, their roster that they had, 2 days ago is obviously not the same as it is now. So now we can kind of really sink our teeth into what the Rockets actually will be this season, because for the first couple weeks, I kind of just throw my hands up in the air because, who knows, is James Harden going to try? Is he not? And he kind of wasn't trying. So, I don't know. The Rockets, they should be kind of fun, honestly. I think it's weird to say because I've been kind of anti-Rockets for the last however long, but none of the players that were, annoying me 2 years ago are on the team anymore. So it's a brand new roster with brand new leadership, and so it's almost kind of a clean slate. And with all these draft picks moving forward, I think they've put themselves in a pretty good spot to start a rebuild. It just does kind of suck that they now are without a lot of their own picks from Daryl Morey's doing a couple of years ago, and he kind of left them high and dry, right, with the trade a bunch of picks for Chris Paul, then trade Chris Paul and picks for Westbrook, and then, you know, have to trade Russell Westbrook for John Wall and a pick. I believe they did get a pick back in that deal, but I mean, they just don't really have any of their own assets. So a team that's rebuilding but doesn't really want to be bad. Very interesting scenario. And yeah, I think that's about all I have on the Houston Rockets. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to, leave a comment letting you know what you think specifically about the Rockets side of this deal. How did they do in terms of a James Harden trade? Because, you know, maybe they could have gotten more, maybe they could have gotten Ben Simmons. Who knows? I'm not here to talk about that stuff right now. Maybe that's for another day. But yeah, man, the Rockets finally have moved on from James Harden. It's a brand new era in Houston. But yeah, with all that said, look out for the rest of my videos for the rest of the weekend. If you missed the Nets one yesterday, go check it out. You'll see the Cavs and the Pacers side of this coming soon. So yeah, with all that said, I will see you guys in the next one.